next thing, H1B visas. This is an interesting thing. This should be relatively quick on this one. Obviously, there was Trump signed an executive order the other day, the gist of which is new H1B applications going forward up to a certain cap and everything else will have to pay a $100,000 fee for applications at various times. There was a bit of miscommunication about whether existing visas would have to pay that fee for renewal or even immediate, and people who were out of the country quickly turned around and raced to come back in. It was all sorts of issues that if you're outside of the country, maybe you're then going to have to pay the fee to come back in and everything else. Now, the H1B visa, despite people saying it's a high-skilled visa, is a visa that's meant to bring in workers if in an industry or in an area where there are insufficient Americans to fill the roles. They are not meant, you're not allowed to use them to displace American workers from their roles already, and thus pay these visa-based workers a lower salary, save yourself money, etc. The idea is that companies say we can't find enough Americans to do these jobs, then we need immigrants to help us. We need visa holders to do it, and so the idea is it's temporary. That's the intent. The practice is that it gets largely horribly abused, and in particular, it is seen as being abused by Indian workers, particularly in tech. The Chinese are, I think, the second largest number of H1B holders, but people are finding out where H1B visas have been applied for and granted, and people are looking at like there's a massive number of US workers available in that industry who don't have jobs or who are willing to work. Is it that the salaries on offer are, or the wages on offer are far below cost of living, or is there other reasons why this is going on? And there are concerns that the system is being exploited unfairly, and so Trump's EO is sort of an attempt to kind of address that somewhat. So, yeah. So you got people working on visas, H1B visas, for 7+ years. Okay, that's like a couple of posting cycles. Been working 10 years in the country on a visa. It's like, well, have you applied for a green card? Have you applied for nationalisation? If not, guess what? You can get your visa cancelled and you can leave the country at any time. That's part of the risk you take by being a foreign visa holder. If you want to stay in the country permanently, you've got to start down the path of naturalisation. And that's the same in any country. This isn't just it's an H1B problem. No, this is you enter the country on a working visa. I mean, in Australia, we have many different types of working visas. There's a backpacker visa. And there was a while back, you would only be granted it for 6 months. So you could come in, you could work up to a certain level, a certain number of hours and salary and things like that, and you could then travel within the country. And so basically it's ideal for backpackers who'd come and, pick crops, pick fruit, work at cafes and things like that to help fund their travel around Australia. They then expanded that to a 12-month visa, but in order to achieve the 12-month visa, the backpacker had to do a certain amount of hours or time in regional parts of Australia to then apply for and be granted the 12-month visa. Its design was also to protect the backpackers so that they weren't being paid below cost of living wages. They were to be paid, like there were strict regulations on employers to ensure that the visa holders were being paid commensurate with existing Australian employees. So it wasn't a case of you bring them all in so you can pay them cents on the dollar and get slave labour, basically. It was to protect the backpacker as well. And so that was the case. But you couldn't extend it past 12 months. You had to leave the country. And then there are rules if you want to then apply for a subsequent backpacker visa, how long you have to wait before doing so. People on tourist visas have to leave and re-enter a country if they're going to stay in the country for, I've been to places where it's a 90-day visa, a tourist visa or a general visa. It may not be a tourist visa, but there are visas like 90-day visas. And if you wish to extend beyond the 90 days and it would be granted, you still had to leave and re-enter the country for 24, 48 hours or whatever, enough to break and reset the visa cycle. There's all sorts of rules in place. So the idea that there are restrictions and regulations on H1Bs in particular, or like any type of visa, that you risk being deported or you risk having your visa cancelled and having to go back to your country of citizenship or go elsewhere in the world, it's not unique. But it seems that people have this idea that if you're there on an H1B, I'm set. Well, there is a pathway H1B to permanency that exists, but yeah, people are like, well, it's being used to, well, people have seen it as being used to create a class of slave labour of undercutting the American market of employees in certain sectors, and then there's been a snowball effect in some of those sectors where it's then been abused to then draw in more H1Bs and more H1Bs and more H1Bs to further displace American workers. Now, there are certain very powerful people in American politics and industry and stuff that are basically saying, look, we want H1Bs because they're highly skilled. Well, that's what the S1 visa's for. But people saying, well, without the H1B, we can't run our companies. And then you've got the American employees going, but you fired us. We were working or we want to work, but we're not given the opportunity. So that then puts the H1B situation in a bind, because it's supposed to be that you can only apply for an H1B visa holder if you can't find an American to do the job. And so there's people exploiting how they list jobs and all the other bits and pieces. So, yes, it's seen as largely a tech thing, and the change is that basically they're going to be an application fee, and so it's forcing companies to basically demonstrate the need. It's putting an impost on companies like, well, if you're gonna bring in a foreign visa holder, you've got to be sure that this is the right way to go. What better way than doing that is to apply a financial cost? And it's like, well, not every company can bear that cost. Well, you look at your employment and hiring practices and employ from within the nation. It's like, well, are you telling me with certainty that even these smaller countries can't hire American graduates or longer term American workers? It's, yeah. It's, and there you go. In terms of future hiring, we won't be doing any more H1Bs. Well, the whole point is that you should be hiring American first. You should only, meant to. So clearly the H1B application and implementation is broken. Workforce shortages? Yep. Okay, great. That's what you're talking about. That's where you're like, okay, that's why the H1B is coming in. But yeah, having people for their linguistic and cultural knowledge, I don't think that's a reason for an H1B. I'm pretty sure it's not. Uh, yeah, no, I don't think that's a thing. But it'll be interesting to see the flow effect. Obviously, Trump's trying to onshore a lot of production and push for the workers and stuff. But I did hear it, well, did see here an interview that uh, Mike Rowe from Dirty Jobs was doing with Theo Von. But the point was something Mike Rowe said, which was that there's already a surplus of jobs in manufacturing that can't be filled by American workers. There may be reasons for that. It may be because salaries and wages are too low, working conditions aren't adequate. There needs to be the jobs need to be made more attractive to the American worker. And the idea that all this extra manufacturing capacity is going to move back onshore, well, the existing capacity apparently is short of workers. How are you going to fix it with everything else going forward? Yeah.